Robett Live.
Live from Silicon Valley, the hub of the tech universe.
With tips on unleashing your entrepreneurial potential.
On TodayFM.
I hope the day has been cruising along good for you. It's 1:31 in Aotearoa, New Zealand, 6:31 in San Francisco. Friday night, apple juice is flowing. And we are stoked to have one of the weekly guests on the show, Mr. Paul Conway, who is the Chief Economist of the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. Kia ora, my friend.
Kia ora, Robett. Nice to be here.
Hey, okay. All right, week two. Let's get into it. How is the Reserve Bank going? How are you doing?
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah, I've had a good couple of weeks. I'm a pig in mud, Robett. That's how it feels to me. I can't actually talk too much about where the economy's at the moment, because the Reserve Bank, we're just heading into what's called forecast week, where we're making decisions on what's going to happen with interest rates and the like going forward. And, you know, if I was to accidentally let the cat out of the bag, that would be quite bad for me. So we can't talk about that. So, you know, and monetary policy is sort of about the business cycle, controlling the business cycle to keep inflation in its box. So that's off topic for the next week or two. So let's talk about something else. And actually, Robett, just the last couple of people you've had on talking about innovation.
Yes.
You know, it's been really interesting. So let's chat innovation if you're into that.
Yep, very into it. And I do like that. As the Chief Economist of the Reserve Bank, I'm sure you need to be very careful about what you say publicly at all times, especially when we're live. So we're more than well respectful around to navigate that. So, you know, HR and legal doesn't go on. Next thing you know, we're just getting our asses handed to us for saying something that we maybe shouldn't have. So I totally agree. Let's not crash the economy or make it do whatever else. Let's play it easy.
Yeah, move markets on a Saturday afternoon. That would be bad.
Be like, yeah, man, living Conway said something about the something, and oh man, what's going on here? All right, but yes, we're talking about digital transformation before and innovation. So maybe we'll start at the simplest point. You live in the world of money and markets and digital, and there's cash and there's all sorts of stuff. So in terms of the world innovation with the finance things or whatever it is, what does innovation kind of mean for you, or when you think about it in your world?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think like you've had the last two guests that you've had on. I think a lot of people think of innovation as sort of a life-changing or a world-changing idea, sort of, you know, like plumbing or inventing the wheel or, you know, mining asteroids in space, which was the Dawn Aerospace example. And yes, you know, there are some firms out there globally and in New Zealand that do push out that sort of global technological frontier. So that is their job, to do these sort of world-changing innovations, and, you know, they're skills intensive and they own lots of patents and the like. But, you know, there's not many firms that are genuinely in that space. And instead, for many businesses, which is sort of more about what the last guy was talking about, you know, innovation, it's about sort of small bite-sized steps in the right direction. So it's sort of about making things better at the margin. You know, it may not be a genuinely new idea. You know, it's sort of more about adapting and adopting new and better ways of working, of doing business that have been developed elsewhere. And, you know, that in that way, sort of regular Kiwi businesses can sort of catch up towards that technological frontier. I'm while I'm sort of chatting, Robett, like there's another misconception about innovation in New Zealand that kind of bugs me a bit, and that's sort of that idea of the number 8 fencing wire thing. You know, the idea that you can go and wrap some wire around something and pretend you're innovating, that's kind of not exactly right. You know, innovation is much harder than that, and, you know, we sort of need to realise that and give it the attention and the resourcing that it deserves. You know, that's how we improve our economic performance over the long term.
Well, when it comes to most of these companies, if it's scary to think about, you know, these transformations and going into the cloud and this innovation world, a lot of them think of, you know, we've talked about before, of this innovation being the end point. After we get there, that will be innovation. And the reality is it's innovating. Like, what are these things you're talking about, Paul? What are these small pieces that you put together? And so it goes, you know, it snowballs one into the other. So you're innovating as an act, as a verb, instead of almost like a destination, right? So it changes the mindset of thinking about destination to journey in a way. And I think that's probably a smarter way that most businesses need to think about it, or else it can bite-sized chunks with it, you know. So if you're a Kiwi business now and you're thinking about this world of innovation or innovating, like, how do you think the mindset shift needs to potentially go to change the dial up with how they approach this world of innovation or innovating?
Well, I think you're talking about it. Like think about it as business as usual. Like it really needs to be part of the DNA of an organisation. And I say that because the world is radically changing at the moment. People's preferences are changing. Their spending habits are changing. There's new technology coming at us from all over the place. That's all changing. So having that sort of innovative mindset is going to be crucial in sort of bringing that all together and, innovating through these changes. It's sort of about, how do we sort of roll with the punches and to get better as a business in that process. It's not quite innovate or die, but I think there are firms in some parts of our economy where, they've got to really change their business model from sort of what they were doing pre-COVID. And if they don't, there's a risk for some firms, at least in some parts of the economy, that they sort of become zombies that are a bit out of place in the sort of new economic environment we're moving into. I think, there's a few sort of practical things that businesses can do. And I like the last guy, that idea, if you're doing something 3 times manually, you should look to automate it. More generally sort of look at successful businesses in your industry and more widely across the country and the world. What are they doing to lift their game and get better at what they're doing, and what can you learn from that? As you said in the last segment, Robett, many of most New Zealand businesses are small. We're sort of a nation of small businesses. And it's unrealistic to think of those firms as sort of having an R&D lab in the basement. And innovation, it's more broad than just R&D. But I think a kind of another aspect of innovation that we could improve in New Zealand is this idea of collaboration of firms sort of coming together to work collectively on aspects of innovation for the benefit of sort of the cluster of businesses. And also, I think, links between research institutions, the universities and businesses could always be better. We've got Callaghan Innovation working in that space. There's many onto it people out there thinking about these things. And I think, we can probably just get a bit better at embracing technology and responding to markets by working together. I think, there's been a big focus on competition in New Zealand, and, there's a lot of wisdom in that. I've just been out watching under 15 football for my morning, and competition brings the best out of kids, but I think we've sort of undercooked that collaborative aspect of building a stronger economy here in Aotearoa. So Kiwi businesses helping each other out for mutual benefit, I think, is important in this innovation conversation as well.
That's such a tricky one when you talk about the collaboration and competition side of things, because when so much of these businesses, they're not local businesses, they actually exist in a global context. So much of things that exist locally can go global. And then when it feels that many New Zealand small businesses look at the neighbor as the enemy instead of realizing that it's New Zealand to the world, the things we can learn from each other to the world. And then when they talk about collaboration, it's this, I like this word called co-opetition. Like, we're in the same bucket on the same team, and we're going to push it together. And like my A is going to bring your A game, and that's going to push us forward together. And there's nothing wrong with trying to engage more, but it's really weird and kind of a little sad sometimes when you see local people fighting local when it's actually a global game, because the headspace needs to shift to really understand that, and you've been fortunate enough to travel around, you've seen the world, you've seen scale, and you've seen perspective. There's way more upside by working with your neighbor than trying to fight them, because everyone's in their own small battle, right? It's like, go have a beer, calm it down, and do some woosah,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think, a lot of Kiwi businesses have just been traditionally focused on that local market. So, they're kind of a bit wary of the neighbouring business that pretty much does the same thing. But, digital technology is changing all that. We're kind of more outward looking, potentially at least, in this economy than we used to be. And I think when you are, standing shoulder to shoulder, looking out to the world, you're in a stronger position than if you're not. It's actually quite normal in sort of North American economies and some of the European economies for groups of businesses to think like a cluster. They have, quite formal sort of cluster boards, and, they sort of formalize working together, for really good results. So, it helps small businesses to get what economists call the benefits of scale. So even if it's, sort of collectively buying packaging material or collectively doing deals on freight, that sort of thing, to more, how do we crack a particular problem through innovation? I think, the kind of wisdom of the crowd in that space is really important. And sort of getting away from that idea, that firms just exist as sort of individual entities, kind of like atoms in a jar or something, and trying to get a bit more cohesive about it, I think would be awesome in the innovation space, and getting the research institutions into it. And it's changing. Like, we are making progress in all of those spaces. That Dawn Aerospace, amazing what those guys are up to. It's it's cool. So yeah, it's good. It's fun. I think COVID, as you were saying in the last interview, has really just pushed things along, and I think this innovation conversation is one part of that.
Yep. And the next part of, obviously, being able to hold hands with the neighbor to do things collectively, and then the power of many can always eventually bring some pretty good commercial results as well. Well, really appreciate your time again, Mr. Conway. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I'll be catching up with you soon for sure.
Good stuff, Robett. Catch you, mate. Thanks.
My man, Mr. Paul Conway, Chief Economist of the Reserve Bank of New Zealand. Very fortunate enough to have him come on the show every week, giving us some insights. Obviously, there's stuff bubbling we'll be hearing about soon in the future, but great to get validated, doubling and tripling down on the world of innovation, the concept of innovating and doing more.